Hey folks, this is Riker with a Gaming News Wrap-Up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include CD Projekt Red's lawsuit coming to an end, Activision Blizzard trying to stop employees from unionizing, the massive Diablo 2 Resurrected Changes Coming, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, before we move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, NordVPN. A VPN is an important tool for keeping your data secure and encrypted on the internet. And I don't dare connect to public Wi-Fi without first enabling my VPN. Be it on a phone or a laptop, in an airport or at a McDonald's, I turn on my protection before connecting to that public Wi-Fi. You never know who may be snooping around trying to steal your personal data, because that Wi-Fi network named McDonald's Free Wi-Fi can actually be anyone using their phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot to trick you into connecting to them. Turn on your VPN, and now your data is getting encrypted before going out. You can also use a VPN to get around region-blocked content by picking a server in a different country. And NordVPN has over 5,400 servers in 59 different countries. And it's so user-friendly that you're basically one click away from hiding your IP or browsing the web from a different country. And one account lets you connect up to 6 devices, be they computers, phones, tablets, you name it. And right now you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount plus 1 additional month for free. Just go to nordvpn.com/Riker. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/Riker, or click the link in the description below to take control of your internet. In our first quick story, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, the original 2001 hack-and-slash action RPG, has re-released on Steam. It seems to currently be getting positive reviews, as it did back during its original release. In last Epoch news, the Eternal Legends update has been live for a week now, and preliminary impressions seem to be very positive. I'm seeing a lot of buzz around this being the most exciting update to the game so far. So if you haven't revisited Last Epoch in some time, now seems a good time to return, or to try it for the first time. I look forward to having some time to check out the update myself, but for those of you who have, sound off in the comments with your thoughts. In other quick news, CD Projekt Red has finally settled its Cyberpunk 2077 launch lawsuit. The company had been accused of misleading shareholders about the game after its disastrous launch, and now negotiations have resulted in CD Projekt Red having to pay out $1.85 million to the plaintiffs. And while $1.8 million might seem like a lot of money, they spent $2.2 million on refunds, and throughout the launch month of the game, they made $563 million in game sales. So I think they can afford it. In Activision Blizzard news, another DDoS attack hit the company's servers again, affecting multiple games. The attack began around 10:15 p.m. on December 14th. Blizzard officially declared it a DDoS around 11 p.m., and the attack lasted until 3 a.m. Then, following up on last week's story of the employees officially going on strike for an indeterminate period of time and calling to unionize, the organized employees clarified this week their reasons for striking and their demands. We knew that it was in response to QA workers at Activision subsidiary Raven being dismissed, but the strikers clarified, quote, "Raven QA employees have been inaccurately told that they would have consistent work and were encouraged to relocate at their own expense with the promise of future raises and better conditions, only to have 1/3 of their staff terminated without reason." Now, apparently the terminations were meant to go in effect on January 28th, but some have allegedly had their contracts terminated early. The two demands of the striking employees are to reinstate all unjustly terminated employees and hire all members of Raven QA, who frequently are kept on contract for years on end, as full-time employees. In our last video, we stated that some of the employees that were being let go were temporary workers whose contracts were being terminated. What we didn't know at the time was that some of those temporary workers had been working at the company for years, and were arguably being strung along with the implication of getting a full-time contract. Now, one can argue that the company is within its legal rights to terminate these employees or otherwise just not renew their contracts. But this isn't about what is legal, it's about what is ethical. And from the perspective of a number of employees who weren't terminated, what happened to their peers was unethical. and this is what they're fighting for. Now, shortly after union cards started being passed around, Activision Blizzard Chief Operating Officer Brian Bulatao sent an internal email to employees warning them of the consequences of unionizing. Now, as a reminder, if at least 30% of employees sign union cards, that will force a company-wide vote on whether to unionize, with a majority then deciding the outcome. In the email, Bulatao said, quote, "We ask only that you take time to consider the consequences of your signature on the binding legal document presented to you by CWA. The CWA, or the Communications Workers of America, is the largest communications and media labor union in North America, representing about 700,000 members in both the private and public sectors, and having existed since 1947. Once you sign the document, you will have signed over to CWA the exclusive right to represent you for the purposes of collective bargaining concerning all terms and conditions of employment. That means that your ability to negotiate all your own working conditions will be turned over to CWA, just as the document says." He added, "Achieving our aspirations about our work culture will be something that will happen better through an active and transparent dialogue between leaders and employees, something on which we can act quickly. That is the best way, and not simply to sign an electronic form offered by CWA or to wait for the result of a legally ordered and regulated negotiation process at some point in the future." He then also added, quote, "I want to be clear about this. The leadership of Activision Blizzard supports your right under the National Labor Relations Act to make your own decision about whether or not to join a union. We support your right to unionize. We support it so much. We just think it's a bad idea for you." Speaking with the Washington Post, Cornell University's Risa L. Leibowitz, a labor and employment law professor, stated that the email, quote, "presents a hard-line, anti-union message to pressure employees against supporting unionization, and that it plays close to the line of illegality by implying that the company's pledged progress in workplace conditions is linked to the company being non-union." And so many union questions are now being asked within the company that Activision Blizzard management is now being offered training courses on how to deal with union questions. Now, if there's been one thing throughout all of this scandal that may result in Bobby Kotick being ousted as CEO, it would probably be allowing a union to form under his watch. Meanwhile, this week, the first video game union in North America was formed. Small indie studio Vodeo, which has released one game, Beastbreaker, and is working on a second, officially unionized. The studio itself was founded this year and has a staff of 13 employees plus at least as many contract workers, and both permanent and contract employees will be represented by the union. The studio's management voluntarily recognized the union, skipping the need to even have a vote. This already suggests that the working relationship between employees and management is good, so why unionize? Well, it seems the main motivation was to help set a precedent in the industry, so that other game devs at other companies may start taking the leap as well. On to Diablo news, starting with Diablo 2 Resurrected. We got this week word of incredible changes coming in the game's future, via a latter season that will introduce new exclusive content like runewords, as well as balance changes to shake up the meta. On a dev update and Q&A stream hosted by Mr. Llama, design lead Rob Gallerani and senior game producer Matthew Cedarquist spilled some details and provided insight into the upcoming changes, all of which will be available for testing on an upcoming PTR, or test server, and the devs are very open to all the feedback you'll want to give. No start date yet for the PTR, but there will be two phases. First, the test for the server fixes, then later another test for the balance changes and seasonal content. And the devs may provide something like template level 99 characters in order for players to properly test the content. We learned that they're currently thinking of making ladder seasons last 4 months. In Diablo 3, they aim for 3 months, but they felt that that was too short for Diablo 2. Then at the end of a season, once your ladder characters become non-ladder, well, what happens now with the shared stash? What's going to happen is that items that were in your ladder shared stash will be added to a new withdraw only stash tab. That's going to last 4 months until the end of the next season, which gives you plenty of time to pull the things out and keep what you want to keep. Also, at the end of a season, the new ladder-only rune words will be available for non-ladder and single player. Not just the items themselves, but the rune words. You can now use those rune words in non-ladder and single player. And then the following season will introduce more new rune words. Though they clarify that they're not committing to adding new rune words every season in perpetuity. The new rune words are being designed in combination with the balance changes to allow them to complement each other. As for the balance changes themselves, their general philosophy was to expand build diversity while retaining class, fantasy, and specialty. So for the Amazon, they're improving melee skills, passive and magic skills, and underperforming bow and crossbow skills. For instance, Impale will now slow on hit, and it no longer relies on attack rating, it just hits. Fen's animation is faster, the casting delay on Valkyries has been improved, Exploding Arrow and Immolation Arrow are having their endgame damage scaling improved. For Assassins, martial arts are being buffed. The combo finishers will now just use one charge instead of all three. Shadow disciplines are being revised. Mostly quality of life fixes to buff durations and casting delays. Underused trap skills are being improved. Fire traps is getting more damage synergies, and blade skills are getting a handful of improvements to make them more viable. For the Barbarian, the devs are trying to achieve greater diversity in combat skills. So leap and leap attack are going to move a lot faster. Throwing skills will be enhanced. Throwing mastery will be given a chance to pierce enemies. Warcry is being buffed. Now, one notable skill that is not being touched is Whirlwind. It's not being reworked. The devs feel that Whirlwind needs a much bigger change, and they want to start off slow with the changes. They don't want to completely rework melee in the first set of balance changes, but it's a possibility for future ladder seasons. They want to introduce the changes gradually. They don't want to have too much of a system shock all at once. Then Druids are getting the most changes, which is great, since they fall behind relative to other classes in terms of max power potential. Fire skills are getting buffed. Arctic Blast is being made less clunky while also being buffed. Improvements to Twister are coming. Shapeshift improvements like being able to cast elemental buffs while in Shapeshift, which is a huge quality of life improvement. Werewolf skills are getting attack rating improvements. Werebear is getting damage improvements to make it viable at higher difficulties. The less viable summons are being made more viable, and each type of summon is getting a stronger identity. For instance, Spirit Wolves now deal cold damage instead of physical. For Necromancer, underused summons are being buffed, like Skeletal Mages. Blood Golem and Fire Golem are being improved, and the Iron Golem's Thorns aura will scale better. In fact, Thorns overall, as just a game mechanic, seems to be getting reworked entirely to scale better. It currently deals a percentage damage, and they're looking to change that to a scaling flat amount. Bone skill synergies are being improved for better late game performance. Bone armor scaling is being improved to give players a reason to invest more than 1 point into it. Weaken is being improved with new damage reduction scaling. Then the Paladin will have its underused combat skills improved. Holy Bolt and Fist of the Heavens are being improved, and his offensive auras like Holy Fire will receive better scaling for higher difficulty. For the Sorceress, her cold armor skills are being reworked to allow for more diversity in which cold armor is selected. Some lightning and fire skills are being buffed. Inferno is receiving better player controls. Blaze is getting a run-walk speed buff. The casting delay on Fire Hydras is being improved, and Nova will scale better. Underused mercenaries are also being buffed to promote greater diversity. The Act 1 Rogue will get new ranged AoE skills. The Act 3 Mercs will have their core stats improved and they're getting more elemental utility skills. Act 5 Mercenaries now have Battle Cry, which lowers enemy defense and damage, and they also have their life and defenses buffed. As for Act 2 Mercenaries, they needed no buffs, but they are getting a quality of life update in the form of being able to hire all 6 different aura types on Nightmare and Hell rather than having to swap difficulties to hire the one that you want. Now, some of these new rune words again will complement some of the mercenaries really well, in addition to some of the class skill changes. No new runes are being added, but underused runes like Cham and Zod will appear in the new rune words, and the 2 rune words they were willing to reveal were 2 that have actually existed in the Diablo 2 game files for years, but for whatever reason were never activated. Plague and Pattern. These rune words may be tweaked a bit, but I'm guessing that the spirit of the rune words will likely stay the same. Plague is a 3-socket weapon rune word that focuses on debuffing an enemy's poison resistance and casting poison novas. And Pattern is a 3-socket claw rune word for martial arts assassins. The devs are also rebalancing underused set items and set bonuses, like Bulkatho's Children and Naj's Ancient Vestige. But don't worry, they explicitly said they are not giving these sets the D3 treatment of adding 6,000% damage multipliers. They're also adding new cube recipes, specifically the ability to upgrade sets to higher tiers, just like you can do with uniques. They're also taking some existing zones in Hell difficulty and tuning them into level 85 zones, to allow for more variety in endgame farming locations. Arachnid Lair and the Ruined Temple are two zones that are being upgraded to have level 85 monsters. Throughout all of this, the only kind of nerf that seems to be happening is to speedruns. See, now in order to enter the Durance of Hate in Act 3, players will need to first smash the Compelling Orb. Overall though, it really sounds like they've been listening to the community. And during the Q&A portion, when asked if they're doing X, Y, or Z, the answers were generally no, but maybe in the future, or not yet, but we're actively looking into this. Now, I should note that after this week's reveal, some people were pointing to the transcribed foreign language interview from months ago that stated that new runewords were coming. And when we had asked Blizzard about this interview, they sorted it out with the interview outlet and realized that a mistranslation/misunderstanding had happened, and so they corrected it to remove reference to any new runewords. Now, some people are currently thinking that this was just a cover-up, but Blizzard insists that it was a mistake, it was a mistranslation, a misunderstanding, that at the time of the interview, which was around the launch of D2R, the devs hadn't even decided to add new runewords, so story checks out. It does really seem like this is just a coincidence. And lastly, onto some quick Diablo 4 news. Blizzard confirmed this week that the quarterly update will be dropping before the end of the month. Now, given Christmas Eve is next Friday, and Blizzard employees are likely to have started their vacation by at least Christmas Eve, probably earlier in the week, but all we know for sure is that they're not working on Christmas Eve. That means that Thursday the 23rd is the very last day that we can expect the update, and almost certainly earlier in the week. Pez Radar said that this update will be a beefy one. Quote, "Expect some system updates and a really great deep dive on effects with some amazing videos from the team. It's nice and enlightening." When asked if the update would cover endgame content, he replied, "Not too much, as there were some new system updates they wanted to highlight and get in front of people first. But some of that actually does dabble into endgame, specifically Paragon." And when asked if we will get some updates about the skill tree and itemization, he replied in the affirmative. Now, I did expect this update to cover more about endgame activities, so it sounds like it won't quite discuss that, but any discussion about systems and mechanics will give us a lot to discuss. Stay tuned for my video covering that update, because that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last video, in which we discussed how an indie dev got robbed by a giant company. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.